and a little bit of introduction of myself. So I'm originally from Mexico City. I've been working on the testing applications from 10 years ago. I've been working in different type of testing. So I'm started been doing a functional tester, usually doing it a GUI testing, and then I moved slowly to the backend. I started to work on mainframe. I started to do some kind of ETL process. Back on those days, only using shell scripting and COBOL. In that point of time was my first time when I was using mainframe, so I need to learn it. And the same case from COBOL, and then started to move forward with my career. I started to work with different locations like Latin America, Central America, UK, India, and USA. I've been working under the business intelligence practice since 7 years ago. In this 7 years ago, I've been in all the different roles that you can find under the testing role path. So I've been a tester, I've been a test lead, I've been a UAT test lead, and I've been also a test manager. As a test manager, I have the responsibility of a small team where we are in charge of the seed testing and the UAT testing. We also provide production support. So because in this case, I was the SME of the data mart in the business side and also in the technology side. So I get a little bit involved in everything. So I've been working on Accenture for the last almost 10 years. In these 10 years, it will be amazing since the culture that we have in this company is really awesome. So I really love working in here. So I have the opportunity to come to the States 6 years ago, where I polished my ETL skills, and even though the knowledge and started to get involved in different type of applications. But let's start with the topic. If you are more interested, you can ping me and link it or whatever if you wanted to know a little bit more about myself. So let's start with the topic. So this morning I will gonna be presenting the industrialization and automation, how to bring them together to success in the BI world. As you know, the business intelligence world is kind of tough, depends in which phase you are working for. But let's start with a little bit of why industrialization. Industrialization is nowadays a skill set that is lacking in the most common profile for an automation and manual tester. It's something that I really was surprised because when you try to staff somebody in some project, you are more worried about what is the skill set, I mean, in the technical side. So if they know SQL in case of you are trying to load data into the database, or if they know shell script, if they know some ETL tools. So this is a common tooling or profiling that you are trying to get when you're trying to bring some resource in the BI project. But let me tell you something, industrialization is something that is really, really important for a tester because we are in the middle of the two ways. So we need to be as technical as a developer, but also we need to know what we are doing or what is the main business goal as a business analyst. So we are the bridge between these two worlds. So we need to understand what they are doing and sometimes translate to the development team that they are having the right approach. But also we need to have the knowledge enough to debate with the business analyst. In this case, because so many times they will not gonna be as familiar as we are, because we are a kind of the final users that we will gonna be facing or seeing the data that is getting loaded. It could be wrong, so it could be wrong in the gathering of the requirements or the user stories in case that you are working in the agile framework. So in this case, I tried to promote the industrialization knowledge because it's really easy to get because you have tons of information. When I was working on the capital market side, trust me, I have Investopedia. I read tons of books about mortgage backend securities, and even though the threat life cycle, I learned how the settlement process was happening in the US. So I started to learn what is the interaction between the FRB banks, so what is the type of sweet messages. So I started to learn all of that in order to do a proper testing. And even though moved forward and started to do a more intelligent automation suite. So this is really important. Take in mind that now in the agile environment or the iterative process, the tester nowadays is not only the tester. So you can wear too many hats. In my previous experience, I was wearing different hats. So I was wearing the tester, the test lead, the test manager, because I need to talk to different people and make sure that we are in compliance with whatever that we need to test. So I need to know what my application is doing in the technical side and also in the business side, in case that I need to meet with any downstream or upstream and justify what type of data that we need. So that's really important when you are trying to get trying to orchestrate a full integration testing across the different parts that is in the particular project. But think about it. So in Agile, so you could be the tester, so you could be the data architect, because sometimes I need to play that role that I see that something is not good. So you know that some of the normalization or denormalization techniques is not well applied, or some of the table that is built by the development team doesn't make sense. So that has a redundant with other tables. So I was able to get all of these points, or even though debate with some of the business analysts that, you know, that rule that you give us doesn't make sense. But let's start to deep dive into the ETL process. So in any BI project, you will gonna be divided in 3 main phases. We will going to have the phase 1 that is ingestion, the phase 2 that is data transformation, and in the phase 3 is the reporting analytics, or showing the data into the dashboard. During the phase 1, we will going to have the ingestion or extraction of the data from multiple sources. So in this case, you can have structured sources and unstructured sources. The structured sources could be some database, so could be some Excel file, flat file, etc. The unstructured sources is more kind of the logs that you don't have a specific pattern, so you can do some text mining techniques or any other techniques during the ingestion phase or in the transformation. During the traditional testing approach, in the ingestion phase, you usually do the data structure validation, the data load strategy, and the source versus target evaluation, and the data completeness. This one is during the traditional model, where you can use any tool that you can find. For automation perspective, for the data structure evaluation, you can check with your metadata or with the mapping document to make sure that the source and target is matching. We have some cool testing tools or automation tools that do it automatically. I've been working with a little bit with Informatica DBO that does for you. So I'm using Alteryx, but this is more for the next phase. Also, I was using Query Search. That is a really good tool, but it's more for the second phase. The data load strategy. The data load strategy is more likely if it's truncate and load, if it's append, or if we have some any type 2 or type 1 in case that we need to do some updation of the existing fields. So these usually happen in the second phase. Don't worry too much about that. Source versus target evaluation. Here is where we can use and add tons of tools. So we can go as fancy as you want. If you wanted to use an Tricentri's BI module, that they can do that. Or if you wanted to use in a simple Excel file, or even though beyond compare, you just do your data dump of your data from the source and for your target, and started to do the data comparison one-to-one. Data completeness means that whatever that you have in the source is translated properly or is getting loaded properly into your target. So this will apply more into the bar chart fields and also in the numeric field, because sometimes in the numeric field you have run up, so you need to check in case that they are worried about that. In the phase 2, you have the transformation load. During this phase occur the transformation and data load. Well, in the data load, in case that you are facing a model that is ETL, that is extract, transform, and load, or ELT, that is extract, load, and transform. That depends on what model you're using in your complete system. We're gonna give you what is the queue for that. During the traditional testing approach, we were gonna have the data transformation testing. The data transformation testing is most likely verify that whatever transformation you have in your mapping document is getting done properly when you are loaded into the next stage. Usually you have on a row or a staging area, and then you load it into your main tables or theme or fact tables, depending on what you are building. If you are building more on working in the data lake environment, you're going to have the raw and process table, or if you are building a data mart, you're going to have a theme and the fact tables. Validation of the data model, dimensional model, and normalization approach. That's what I was talking earlier. So, and this is where we were going to be applying some of the industrialization knowledge. So we can check what is their dimension modeling and see if it makes sense. Because so many times the data architects, they are not fully involved in what they are doing in the business side, and you can help them, and you can provide some cue or some guidance to them to try to implement the right dimensional modeling, and sometimes in the normalization approach, because you are more familiar with the data. You know what is the business flow and how the data is getting created. Then we have the data completeness testing that is similar to the first phase. In this particular area, you are checking that whatever that is getting loaded from the staging area or the raw area is getting loaded properly into the theme, facts, or process tables. Incremental ETL testing is in case that you have some incremental process that you need to check the type 1, type 2, or any updation strategy you have. So the tooling that I could recommend for these phases is a ton of tools. So some of them is Informatica DBO, that is good for that, but they need a lot of setup. You have Tosca BI for 3 centuries, so it's also really good. I really love to use Alteryx. Alteryx is not a traditional testing tool. In fact, it's not a testing tool. It's kind of a data blending tool or ETL tool. So if you have the opportunity to work with that, just deep dive on that, and you're gonna love it. So also you can use query search. Let me go with the phase 3. Getting lost here, so sorry about that. So in the phase 3, we're gonna be having the reporting layer or the dashboard layer. So in this case, as the testing, we need to make sure that the information is getting populated properly into the dashboard or into the reporting. In case that you are going in the more traditional approach, that is the reporting, or if you go to the more cutting edge that nowadays is the dashboards that help you the data more likely in the real time or near real time, or in case, or sometimes monthly or weekly or whatever that they are setting up. So in that particular phase, you're gonna be validating with the source qualifier or the field that they have in the reporting layer. So here you can also use the tool like query search. You can use Informatica DBO or Alteryx. That is the one that I recommend the most. So today I wanted to start to introduce an term that I call it intelligent testing. Intelligent testing is something that I started to create by myself, that I'm combining the industry knowledge plus whatever that we are doing in the project and tried to merge together. I started to do more intelligent testing and started to be worried more about the business process. Understand what is the flow of the data and how we can apply here. During the phase 1, as I mentioned earlier, is the ingestion of extraction. So many people doesn't care about what is happening in this particular phase. So in my approach, that is the intelligent testing approach, I'm care. because I know that my application is stable. I prefer to evaluate how the data is getting sourced. If I have the complete data, in case that I need to test some specific flows, I need to know, because so many times, and you are gonna see across the industry, you have garbage in and garbage out. Sometimes the source doesn't care that you are doing some integration testing. They just wanted to participate and only do the connection testing. They don't care whatever data that they have, but I care. So in my previous experience, when I was handling integration teams or UAT teams, I usually evaluate, first of all, the source data. that is coming. So my area to work on that is the raw layer or the staging layer. So I was
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
didn't have an idea how was working, how supposed to work that pricing information. So he didn't believe me. I said, okay, I will not gonna defer my defect. I will gonna keep it open, and I wanted to go to the next level. That was the business. When I started to talk to the business, they told me, oh, you know, Adolfo, you are right. So this is the way that the business analysis is implemented. It's wrong. He is not giving you the right requirements because we are having the price information for the ask price, and we are using it this way for this report, and blah, 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 blah. So they said, oh my God, we just saved tons of time because Adolfo was able to see that, because Adolfo was able to know that, how is working truly the application, what is the topic that we are working. So this is a small example. This is real because I was working in that application, and I was given this kind of specific cases to the business analysts and also to the developers. And I also was working and evaluating the source qualifiers for the reporting team. And in this case, I become the SME. So how do you believe that? How a tester? That's for some developers think that we are not technical enough for that. And also the business analyst, they said, oh, they have not the business knowledge enough to do that. So I proved them wrong. I was SME for the business side. In case that they have some production issue, they come to me and they approach me, and I let them know, okay, this is a source issue. Okay, no, this is an issue for the application, or no, this is timing, because the report that they're requesting is not requesting the proper time, because we are not having that information. That information will gonna come until the next day, or oh, you know, this information will not gonna be available until that day. So I was provide those type of insight, and also with the reporting team, I work a lot, because sometimes when I am analyzing or reviewing their source qualifiers, I say, why you have this join? So this doesn't make sense. You are double joining, or you are joining these tables in the way that is not good. So you're not going to have that type of information. Or sometimes I detect that they are trying to get some information that is not even in the data mart. So I was talking to them and let them know, oh, you know, this is not possible. If you want that, we need to talk to the data architect, and we need to change the model, because the information that you are trying to bring is not there. So it exists in the source system, but we are not getting that information. So that comes to a different application. So our takeaway. So I wanted to emphasize what is the importance of the industrialization in the career part of the test engineer and how can evolve from a tester to an SME or data architect. So that is possible with this application. And I wanted to reevaluate the traditional automation profile, but this we can see in another session. Thank you so much for your time. So my name is Adolfo Lozano, and you can contact me on LinkedIn or in any media. Thank you so much, and have an excellent day.
Kindly drop your questions via the Slido platform, and we have Adolfo live with us to answer them. Sorry to interrupt, Adolfo. You're not audible. Your voice is not coming.
Sorry about that. So how do you impart this industry knowledge to your whole team? Usually when I onboard on a new resource, I usually start with this part. So I usually try to educate them what the application is doing, not in the standpoint of the testing side. So I always start with the business knowledge. So in this case, in previous projects, we were working under the threats. So I usually give them on a class of the threat life cycle. I usually use real scenarios. So I usually start with for the threat spec and the threat TBA. I usually said, okay, suppose that you are going to buy a car. You wanted to purchase a car, so you go to the car dealership and you tell them, oh, I want a car with these characteristics. I don't care the model. I just want a blue car that is on a V6 and has a 19 inches wheels. So that's the only information that you give to the car dealership. So they said, okay, we can find you a car in your price range. So in that case, we already create an TBA threat. This is one of the examples that I give. And in the other hand, when you go to the car dealership, you already have the VIN number, and you already know which car do you want or the registration number. So this I call it a spec threat. So I started to give them those kind of lessons that they understand in overall at the beginning, and then we can deep dive. But how the application is working, so I explaining what is the class. So A, B, C, D, and E, that is most commonly the thread that we are using. So started to give some literature, and when I do some examples, I do more emphasize in the business process and not at all in the testing processes. So I usually go with that with my team, and I always push them to understand the industry knowledge and try to have the big picture. So, or sometimes I schedule meetings with the business where I give some lesson that, okay, you wanted to know more, so we have some sources like Investopedia. Investopedia is really good. So you can have some real examples of in case of trading, or you can You can look on that, or you can come to me and I can explain you and give you a business insight. On what basis you can map the success of your automation testing. So in this case, most likely it was in the reputation in the team. So in my last Etl project, or the data mart project that I do in the finance industry, I came from application that was 400 plus defects, and nobody trusts in the information of this application. So we started to work with this team. So our director in that point of time, they bring in a special team that was myself, data architect, and a project manager. So we started to work, the three of us together, and we started to close it up the defects. So during the UAT testing, we are not anymore the problem, because thank you to the end-to-end automation testing that I was doing, we were able to catch it up the defects that sometimes they blame us, because we was in that point of time kind of on a middle tier, that we received the information blended from one system, comes to our system, we started to process again the data, and then bending the data to another reporting layer or to the dashboard. So many times the issue comes from the source, but they did not know that it was coming from the source. So I started to apply those end-to-end scenarios in the source system and started to detect what was wrong. And I was telling the sources, hey, you know, your baseline is not, your production baseline was not doing properly, because the timing on the transaction is not coming well. So sometimes those accounts is missing, and we ended up discovering that sometimes in that system, when you have when they open the thread and cancel in the same day, the transaction was not coming, but was staying in the source system. And when they tried to reconcile between the source, the original system, against the reporting, they were not able to see it. But nobody can identify why. So we started to work on that. We started to get those scenarios. End-to-end automation might need an amalgamation of SQL queries and standard text like Selenium. Well, not truly, because you are going to the third phase. You are thinking that in case that you have the reporting layer, but what happens if you don't have the reporting layer? What happens if your application is in a middle tier? So not that you are working in the BI world, that means that you always are going to have that. Nowadays in the industry, so many times is handled by different teams. I see in different companies that they have one team that do the ingestion, and another team that do the transformation, and another team that is doing the evaluation of the reports. What happens if you only have the middle tier, or where you only process the data? How do you guarantee that you will gonna have the correct results if you don't have that? So is where I can debate a little bit with the Selenium. I'm not against Selenium, but if you have the advantage to see the report, go ahead and do it. If not, you need to apply another type of end-to-end regression testing or end-to-end automation, where you need to most care about how your application needs to behave at the business level. What activities were most successful in sharing your knowledge to your colleagues? Well, I started to have some of my testers started to become business analysts after we started to get the business knowledge. So he started to more trustful members where they were able to evolve as the same way. They started with me with testers, and I started to see as a UAT tester or a UAT test lead. So they started to have this knowledge, and they started to were able to get more insight into the business. They started to gain more trust, so they started to take my resources for another teams, because they were able to get not only do the testing, so they were able to evaluate the complete application. Now, field service, who doesn't have actual. Okay, that's a good one. So I will gonna take this one and I will gonna reply later. So the field service engineer and software engineer. So I need to do a little bit more research that since it's the manufacturing industry. So I'm more involved into the supply chain and then the financial industry. So I will gonna take a look on that and reply back later. So most likely you need to have a combination of both, but I will gonna take that later. Real data completeness covers metadata and audit columns. Well, data completeness is a little bit different. Most likely data completeness is when you are having in your source system. So probably you can have a field that is that you establish in your model as 20 characters per car, but truly in the source is coming as 40. So when you are doing data completeness, you will also validate that, oh, you know, in the source we have 40 characters, but it's going to get truncated when it's getting ingested, and we only have 20. So in this case, it's more about that. And even though with the numbers, sometimes they have some fixed decimal or float where they take in 4 or 5 decimal characters, and sometimes when you get loaded, you get truncated. So you need to know if they are expecting that truncation, if it's more run up, or they need to keep the value. This is more likely for the data completeness. Metadata and audit columns. Audit columns, metadata is more when you are evaluating the data structure. You need to validate that that if they provided the metadata is matching with whatever that is you're having in your source system or whatever that is getting loaded into the data. So with the metadata, you are more care about it. If they said that it's bar card 20, you need to have the bar card 20. So it's more about that. And the audit columns is different to that. Let me see. Yeah, we have more questions, but I only can see 3 of them.
If there are any more unanswered questions, we'll put them in the panel session. So thank you, Adolfo, for sharing your knowledge.